So today we're going to talk a little bit about brewing coffee as a coffee buyer. So this is not about brewing coffee for a coffee shop. This isn't barista lessons. This is what you would do as a coffee buyer to help determine which coffees you're going to go ahead and buy. So obviously when I'm thinking about buying a coffee, I'm looking at the green, I roast it to a light cupping color, and I cup the coffee. This is the basic thing you do. But because your customers are going to be brewing the coffee at home or in coffee shops, it's also good to do that here in the lab as well, so we can come to an understanding of how the coffees will actually perform in a real life setting, if you will. So what I have in front of me here are three coffees that I'm thinking about purchasing. I've got a Nicaraguan, a Rwanda, and an El Salvador. And I've got brewing equipment scales here. I've got a French press, a pour-over system, a kettle for my pour-over. I also have an espresso machine here, and I also have a drip brewer that we'll be looking at in a little bit. So basically, I'm going to take these coffees and put them through this equipment and taste the results and use those results to help inform my buying decision. So of my three coffees that I have, as I mentioned before, this is a Nicaraguan, this is a Rwanda, and this is an El Salvador. If we look closely at these coffees, you can see that I've roasted the Nicaragua and the Rwanda to a relatively light color. I can use this color coffee, this light roast, for a cupping, and I can also use it for brewing, and that's what I intend to do today. I'm also going to brew this El Salvador, but if we look at it, you can see it's significantly darker than the other one. I did this for a couple of reasons. I've already cupped this coffee, so I know what it tastes like in a lighter roast. So I took a little bit darker because I want to brew it at a darker roast, and I also want to see what it tastes like as an espresso component. I'm not necessarily going to make a single origin espresso out of this coffee, but I am thinking about putting it in my blend. And if it's going to be a component in my blend, it's important that I know what it tastes like by itself. So we're also going to make some shots of espresso with this particular coffee right here. So that's what's going on with that. And really quickly, I also want to show you what I have here for the coffee brewing equipment. This is just a standard French press. I'm going to brew these coffees in the French press, and I'm also going to use this very simple sort of miniature pour-over system right here. This is a Hario pour-over. Very simple and straightforward, but I've chosen these two because they're really at the opposite end of the spectrum from each other in terms of the kind of coffee they produce. So I expect more body and slightly more muted or slightly more muddled flavors from the French press. I expect much less body, but perhaps more clarity of flavor from the Hario pour-over. So if I brew, for example, this coffee in these two different ways, I will have a really good idea of how it's going to taste throughout the spectrum of possible flavors.